Hey, what's going on here? Chris Meaney, FTN. Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals happening tonight. And oh, baby, the Edmonton Oilers are in trouble. The series shifts to Edmonton. If there's a game that the Oilers are going to get in this series, maybe it is tonight, but it has not looked good for them. I know they had some strong numbers at 5-5 in game 1, but game 2, not so much. So I wanted to share my card with you, keeping it pretty light here tonight in the NHL, 8 Eastern this evening in Edmonton between the Panthers and the Oilers. So a couple picks I wanted to share with you guys. If you're hanging out, smash the like button. You have any comments, any questions, you can always leave them here in the YouTube section. Reach out at Chris Meaney, Mean Streets FTN at gmail.com. So let's get into tonight and kind of, it's been an under series. And I know I don't usually have a lot of unders. I do have one here for you guys that I wanted to share, but I think the process for game 2, even though we didn't get a couple of those picks right, was correct. And we'll lead here with Connor McDavid. So Connor McDavid for over 3.5 shots is plus 100 over at Bet365. He had 3 shots in game 2. Like to see him be a little bit more aggressive. I mean, it's in his nature to be a pass first guy. But ultimately, this guy is creating a lot. I mean, this is not on him being down 0-2, right? Other guys like Leon Draisaitl need to step up. The difference between the Oilers and the Panthers here, and why we liked Florida heading in, and why we're pretty close to getting the 18-1 for them to win the Stanley Cup, is the depth that they have. The third line in particular for Florida with Lindell and Luostarinen and Tarasenko, talked about those 3 heading into game 2. They've really been difference makers in the secondary scoring. I know it's not really happening in this series, but the shot attempts are there. As for McDavid is getting a ton of ice time, right? I mean, he's just behind Evan Bouchard in terms of ice time. He's had over 51 minutes here in 2 games. And, in as close as to a must-win situation as you can be in tonight, I expect him to get a ton of ice time again in this game. So McDavid leads the Oilers with 6 shots at 5-5 and 9 at all strengths. So the over 3.5 here. He's had at least 4 shots in 5 of his last 7 home games. So last change, maybe get away from some of the matchups, double shifted on the power play for about a couple minutes. So we're going with Connor McDavid over 2.5 shots. On the flip side, there's a player that's really caught my eye in this series as well on the Panthers. He has a goal in each of the first 2 games of this series, 3 total. And he's caught the eye of Panthers head coach Paul Maurice as well, because he was promoted about halfway through game 2. I know Barkov suffered the injury, and he's going to be good to go. He was already skating yesterday, and he was skating with Rodriguez and with Reinhart. So I'm looking at Evan Rodriguez here today for 2 shots, minus 145 over at DraftKings. And to hit the score sheet, it's pretty good value here at plus 150. As I mentioned, he's got 3 goals, 1 in every game. He had the game-winning goal there in game 2. And the promotion, we've seen this with Paul Maurice at times shuffling his lines around. So it looks like he's going to have Verhaeghe back with Tkachuk and Sam Bennett. Bennett's been fantastic. I mean, I think we had that right in game 2. I believe he enters on like a 5-game point streak, which carries over from his time against the Rangers in the previous series. But now he's putting Rodriguez up on that line with Barkov and with Reinhart. And I think it's good, right? He gives him 2 lines. I mean, that first line was great with Verhaeghe, Reinhart, and Barkov, but it wasn't really clicking. So put the old band back together, I suppose, is the second line. And then that third line is playing pretty good. I'm going to shy away from Tarasenko, but we did have him for 2 shots. And I do have a lean to the over 1.5, but I just want to keep the card pretty short here. I want to share it with you guys. So McDavid 4 shots, Evan Rodriguez 2 shots, and to pick up a point. Matthew Tkachuk, a little bit juiced here. This is a DK alternate for him to have 3 shots. We did get this one correct in game 2. He's fairly quiet in game 1. I mean, he's all over the place, right? He gets in your face. He's got Bouchard rattled. He's got Kane rattled. He's got McDavid rattled. He's got everyone rattled. This is what he does. He had like double-digit hits the other night. He leads Florida with 9 attempts and 5 shots at 5-5. So we're taking him for 3 shots here at minus 160. And I think the process, again, is right with Evan Bouchard, who was stuck on 2 shots in the other game. Bouchard has 14 attempts at 5-5 and 25 attempts at all strengths. Now, a lot of those shots are, blocked, of course. I mean, everything seems blocked in this series. But a couple shots wide on purpose. Like, that is all baked into it. But 25 shot attempts is quite a bit for a guy that has 57 minutes of ice time in 2 games. So the process seems right. Attempts, ice time. If they get a power play or two, he's going to live on that power play. Even his defensive partner, Matthias Ekholm, has double-digit shot attempts in this series as well, and at 5-5. So both of those guys are putting a lot of pucks towards the goal. So we're going with Evan Bouchard at over 2.5. I think there's some value with these Florida guys for a point. Carter Verhaeghe for a point at -142 over at FanDuel, and Matthew Tkachuk for a point at -150 at DraftKings. Now, because they're playing together at 5-5 and on the power play, they do correlate if you wanted to put these guys in a same game parlay. I went over to DraftKings and FanDuel and Bet365, and the best price I'm seeing is +135. So I'm okay with that. I'm going to take them as singles. But it does make a lot of sense to put them into one play because most likely, if Verhaeghe hits the score sheet, Kachuk's going to be in on that goal. Power play 5-5 stuff there as well. And the same sort of deal here with Bouchard and Hyman. We've been doing this throughout the entire playoffs. It hasn't worked out for us in the first 2 games of this series, but +129 over at FanDuel for Evan Bouchard and Zach Hyman to pick up a point. And then Ryan Nugent-Hopkins with the under. That's right, an under shot prop here for you on a Thirsty Thursday. Nugent-Hopkins under 1.5 shots over at FanDuel is +132. Now, it's like the opposite of what I've been saying throughout the entire playoffs. Shy away from FanDuel in 60 lines if you're taking the over because it doesn't count overtime. For this, we are going to go to FanDuel just in case we get like a double overtime game tonight where Nugent Hopkins racks up a couple shots in overtime. That would just, it would kill me. It'd be brutal to see. If you don't have FanDuel available to you, I saw +135 over at Bet Rivers for the under 1.5 shots. Again, if it goes to overtime, you could get burned. That's why I think FanDuel is worth it, even though the price isn't as sexy, but still +132, under 2 shots. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins over at FanDuel. For Nugent-Hopkins, he's got 2 shot attempts and 1 shot at 5-5. I joked with the subs. It was a painful joke. I said, proceed with caution because the last time I did the under 1.5 shots, Joe Pavelski, who wasn't getting any attempts in the series against the Oilers, and he was demoted to the 4th line in that final game, game 6. He had like 5 shots in the first period, and he was promoted to the top line. Unders are nerve-wracking. The fact that he is on that first power play and he's, playing with McDavid at 5-5, of course, he's going to get the ice time, but he just doesn't like to shoot the puck, right? He doesn't like to shoot the puck at all. 2 attempts and 1 shot at 5-5, a couple more on the power play. I know he rang one off the bar in game 2, but I'm going to take the under here, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So that's the card. Listen, I have a slight lean to Edmonton, but only because it feels like the wrong reasons to be on Edmonton. They're back home, crowd behind them. McDavid in a must-win situation. How can he take his game to another level? Does Draisaitl show up? All these things, a lot of questions. But the Panthers are just a better 5-5 squad. Edmonton had 0 high danger chances at 5-5 in game 2. 0. They didn't have 1 shot attempt from the slot at 5-5, and they only had 5 shots at 5-5 through the first 2 periods of game 2. I know that their 5-5 play was great in game 1, and it was Bobrovsky, but that may have just been like, hey, Panthers were a little flat at home for the first period or so. I thought from the halfway point on in game 1, it was a lot closer, and Florida controlled the play in game 2. So I do have a lean to the Oilers. The trend is the under here. With the way that the Panthers are so stingy at 5-5, no team allowed fewer goals than them overall. They were tied with the Jets, but at 5-5, no team allowed fewer goals than them as well. And they've done a good job on the penalty kill. And their power play looks atrocious for one, why you lean with the under. Florida's power play looks absolutely lost. And it's credit to the Oilers. The penalty kill has been, they're close to setting a record for the best penalty kill percentage of all time through a Stanley Cup playoff run. And they're right there. So it should be fun. I do have that lean to Edmonton, but I think for me, my card wanted to share with you guys: McDavid 4 shots, Rodriguez 2 and a point, Tkachuk 3 shots, Evan Bouchard 3 shots, and I would really leave it at that. Those are my favorites. McDavid is the 2-unit play for me. The rest, singles, and then we get into some point props that I just feel like there's good value. We don't normally get a Tkachuk at -150 for a point, over Hagee at -142 for a point. Then we're combining Bouchard and Hyman, and then we're trying a little something here with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Good luck on the ice, and we will preview game 4 with a couple more props as well. We'll talk to you soon. Hit me up if you have any questions at Chris Meaney here on the YouTube channel.